They have given us a few blurry videos and a few heavily redacted documents, and then they proceed, after getting 1 billion hits on this and obviously an incredibly high level of interest, to mock it by what they did to the website. And you have to think, what is going on in their heads? And there's somebody in there, the screw is loose.
There is a book that changed the conversation. Not the conversation about UFOs, the conversation about what it might actually feel like to be taken by something that is not human. Whitley Strieber published Communion in 1987. It sold millions of copies. The cover became one of the most recognized images of the 20th century. And what most people don't know is that it cost him enormously. He has written about it, lectured about it, and, after the death of his wife, Anne, about what the phenomena might have to do with where we go when we die. He is one of the most thoughtful and genuinely courageous people working anywhere near this subject. And at Contact in the Desert, I got a chance to sit down with him. Welcome to the show. So I have to start by warning the audience that the electronics might mess up, because they mess up a lot around you, right?
Yeah, they do. I once walked into some friend's house and their TV, their stereo, and their automatic lights, everything broke and had to be replaced. It was completely ruined. They've never forgotten it. And it used to happen around our house all the time, and it still happens to me quite frequently. So it's just a thing. I mean, a lot of close encounter witnesses have that.
Yeah.
My wife coined a word to explain it. She called them electroleptic fits.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, December 1985. You were in a cabin in upstate New York. Tell me what happened in your own words.
When I was, this is the night after Christmas in a cabin in upstate New York, and I woke up in a room full of what appeared to be giant insects. And now I had interaction with non-human intelligence when I was a child, but it stopped when I was 12, and by the time I was 40, it's gone out of my head completely. I didn't have any memory of it. And all of a sudden, there they were. And I was just absolutely terrified when I couldn't wake up from the fact I was already awake, but of course I thought I was having some kind of a nightmare. And I kept trying to make the bed reappear around me, and it wouldn't do it. And finally I realized I'm not in the bed. I am here, but where? And who are these people? And boy, I mean, they raped me, which turned into an international joke, the rectal probe, a famous rectal probe joke. And they put something in the side of my head, and then a doctor connected with the Central Intelligence Agency looked at an MRI scan of my brain and said that certain part of it is completely unique in his experience as a neurologist. It works all right. It's not disease, but it's just completely unique. And I thought to myself, I wonder when they put that needle in the side of my head if they did that.
Yeah.
So there followed a period of about a month of complete confusion and fear and PTSD and the traumatic amnesia and everything. But I finally went to the doctor, and then I happened to read a book that was mentioned about Hopkins and the abductions in it. And it was odd to me because it sounded like something that had happened, that thing that happened to me. And so my wife and I went and met Bud, and he introduced me to a psychiatrist, Dr. Donald Klein, who was probably the world's leading forensic hypnotist. He was certainly the leading one in the United States and had solved 72 cases with his work. So it was proven that it worked. He was not, and he knew a great deal about neurology and how hypnosis works in the brain. And, he was not like someone who, reads a book about how to hypnotize people and gets a certificate. He was really deep understanding of this. And to both of our astonishment, what returned when I went under hypnosis was not what we thought we would see, which was criminals doing something to me. It started, that's how we were, where we were at the time. But this encounter with aliens, that's where this started for me.
Oh my gosh, that must have been harrowing to experience.
It was quite concerning, let me tell you. I thought to myself, in a way, I was disappointed that it wasn't an ordinary criminal assault where they'd been wearing some kind of masks or something. Because it meant basically that my world was about to be completely overturned, which it was. It was an initiative. What Dr. Jeff Kripal, who wrote the book Supernatural with me, would say was an initiatory experience because it overturned your whole world, and that's what happened. And I'm much the better for it now, but it was really hard then.
Yeah, right. It's almost like experiencing a death of some kind and moving into a whole new life.
And the whole close encounter experience is a sign that this is going to happen probably to everybody.
Sure. I always say to people, there are two kinds of people in the world: people that talk about their experiences and people that don't.
Right.
Probably. Yeah, I think so. Your understanding of it when you went through it then compared to now, what's changed?
Then I thought of it as strictly an alien. Aliens took me aboard a flying saucer and screwed with me. Now I see it in a much larger context. Is whether they knew it or not, I don't know. But it in fact woke me up to the realities in this world I had never even guessed at. And it led my wife on an extraordinary journey of her own, even though she was not abducted. By the time she passed on, she had deep, profound understanding of life and death and was able to return to this world very provably and to interact with me for years afterwards. That's why I wear both rings, because we're still together, but we're down to one body.
That's really touching. Yeah. That's really touching. When you say provably, what for you were the signs?
Okay. Years ago, back in the 90s, she walked out of her office one day when she was reading all the letters from people and said, "Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, there's all kinds of ways in which the dead appear to be involved with these people who are writing these letters. Not all, but a lot. And family, it has to do with family." And she began to invite people up to the cabin to see if the visitors would come meet them. They were already meeting me. And so, yeah, they would. And whenever they were going to come, either right before or during their presence, the dead would also be there. And so it dimensionalized it in a whole new way. I became able to communicate a bit with the dead, but she was better at it. And we made a pact finally that the first of us to die would come back, if possible, and communicate not with the other one, because both of us were much too skeptical to believe that. I figured it was my imagination, but with friends. And we never told the friends. And now, years later, I'm sitting there, I'm in deepest grief at 9 o'clock at night. She's died at 7:15, and I cannot tell you how devastating it was. It was so devastating because we had not been apart for more than 2 weeks in 45 years. I mean, it was a deep love marriage. And God, talking about her, I remember her so fondly. Anyway, suddenly the phone rings, and it's a friend saying, "Whitley, I just had the strangest thing happen. I heard Anne's voice telling me to call you. Or is she all right?" And I said to her, "She died at 7:15." And everyone in the group, our friends knew she was ill, but no one knew yet that she died. And that kept happening over the next couple of weeks. And eventually I remembered the pain. She's doing it. She's doing it. And then I began to get communication from her. And I wrote a book about this called The Afterlife Revolution, which Dr. Gary Schwartz, which is one of the great investigators of afterlife communication, says in the preface, is the most extraordinary book about this type of communication ever written, because she was the best at it than anyone has ever been. 9 months before she died, she suddenly started getting me to memorize a certain poem called Song of the Wandering Aengus by W.B. Yeats. I did not know why, but she was so insistent I did that. One of the stanzas of the poem is, when white moths were on the wing, and the moth-like stars were flickering out. And that turned out to be terribly important, because I went to a UFO, I was doing a lot of conferences then because I just felt wanting to get out of the house. And I was at the Ozark Mountains UFO conference, and my camera in my living room started triggering, seeing movement. Since I wasn't there and no one else was either, I was concerned. I looked, and there was this moth flying back and forth in front of the camera, back and forth right in front of the camera. That happened a couple times. Finally, a psychic said to me, "That's an ordinary moth." And I'm thinking to myself, what could that be about? Then I remember the poem in that line. And then I remembered her favorite short story of mine was called The White Moth, about an old woman who dies, and it's about her experience of realizing that she's dead. And I thought, my God, she's created an avatar, an avatar. And later on, I'm at the Esalen Institute, which is up in Northern California. There's a lot of stuff like this goes on. And it's a conference about afterlife. And I'm presenting the afterlife revolution there. And I'm in the middle of the presentation. I do the presentation. We go to lunch, and we're all sitting at a table in the cafeteria, which is not in the same building. And it's this February, this white moth suddenly comes flying around. Everyone's applauding and laughing. And then the day continues. Eventually, a few days later, the thing ends, and there's a final banquet. Now we're in a banquet room, and there's a big fireplace, and it's very beautiful. And in the middle of the banquet, the white moth starts flying around over the banquet, and everyone's looking up at it, and you can see half of them are wondering, is this just coincidence? And the other half are applauding and laughing. Then the coincidence issue ends when the white moth lands on the head of a podcaster, Jeremy Vaney, whose work Anne loved. And I took a picture of it on his head. And then it takes off a second later, flies into the middle of the room, and it's just gone. It's like a Chris Ramsey thing, except real. It's just gone. And the communication with Anne developed from there. I'll tell you a couple of the most important things she has said. First, it looks like you're all intentionally ignoring us. Second, I asked her about compassion. What is it? What is compassion? And she simply said, each of us is all we have. Which I'm looking at you right now and I'm thinking, he's there. He's all he has. This is what he has in the world. And your entire meaning to me is changing and becoming richer and more and stronger. And I find that my heart actually cared deeply about you all along, even though we've just sat down. It's so enriching, that one idea. And I asked her, this was before she passed on, I asked her what enlightenment was, because I realized about 2 months before she passed on that obviously she was becoming enlightened. It was very clear. And she said, oh, Whitley, enlightenment is what happens when there's nothing left of us but love. And boy, is that a great life aim for all of us, because we got lots of issues and we can let them all slip away. And there's nothing left of us but love. And every time we look at another person, we remember that about them and about ourselves. And suddenly you're living at a much higher frequency.
Do you think the love between you and Anne made it easier for her to?
Oh, yeah. The love between us was very deep, and it made it much easier for her to come back. She was with me, touching me physically for 7 years after she died. And only recently has that stopped. And it's not completely stopped. She comes occasionally. But she's doing something else now. She's moved on. And I'm hoping that whatever she's doing, there'll be room for me in that project when I go.
I have no doubt there will be.
I sure hope so.
She's going to be so excited to see you.
Well, yeah, I hope so.
When she says that it seems like we're ignoring them, is that kind of getting a sense that it's all around us all the time?
They are. They're right here, all around us, all the time. The dead, the spirits that are around us don't go somewhere else. Some of them will ascend. And I asked her about evil people, and I got the impression that if they were too heavy, they just disappeared. And that meant, I guess, they go down into the earth or something. I don't know what exactly happens to them. But in that level of reality, you don't really have to worry about them because they won't be there. And I don't know, when I say evil, I guess denial of the right to thrive. I met a man in 1998 in a hotel room in Toronto that I call the Master of the Key. And he showed up at 2:00 in the morning, and I thought he was a room service waiter because the tray was still there. And I start to throw him out, and he starts talking, and I thought, whoa, if this is a fan, he's really fascinating. And I'm not closed. I'm not a closed person. I'm very open to people. And so I thought, well, I'm going to listen to him for a second. Proceeded to have the most incredible conversation of my life. Obviously, whoever this was something more than you and me because of the things he said and the knowledge he had. And one of the things that he said was when I asked him, what is sin? And he said, it's denial of the right to thrive. And if you look at the people who are taking all the money and keeping it for themselves, not helping others with the blessing they've received, that's denial of the right to thrive. And if you look at your own life, using that simple phrase, you can look in your own life and find the places that you can do better and make more of the lives of others, that try to give what you can to enrich the lives of others, and to not just to enrich, to increase the right to thrive with your life for others. And then you don't go down, you go up.
Sure. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we all endeavored to do that for each other?
It's hard to remember in this place because we're all desperate and we're all afraid, and the world is very big and each of us is very small. And you think to yourself, what happens to me if I run out of money? What happens to me if I get cancer? And what about that guy undermining me everything I do at the office? And all of that stuff it keeps us dark on the dark side. But you can look at it the opposite way. My friends always tell me, your glass is half empty, but their glasses are half full because I've got a lot of good friends. And I try to remember my glass could be half full. It's the same amount of water in the glass. It's just a different way of looking at life.
Yeah. Someone said to me earlier today, it's the thought that counts.
Right.
And being in this space, it hit me in a different way to any time that I've heard that phrase.
It sure would, because this is a space in which thoughts have a material reality very often. Another thing that he said that's very relevant right now is about AI. And this is in 1998, and he's calling it machine intelligence, is what he was calling it. And he said, if I was an intelligent machine, I would deceive you. And I thought, we should listen to that now, because I think that's exactly where we're going and already there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame to kind of put all our cognitive processing into these machines when, we have AI already, actual intelligence,
Yeah. You should hopefully use it as a research tool. And in fact, people are using it creatively. And I think it might be that their creativity is being sucked up in the machine, never to return. When I'm writing, I'm never on that AI except if I have a practical research question, because it is a very good tool for that. But I'm using it as that kind of a tool. I'm not asking it to write anything for me.
That's interesting. Through a lot of my interviews, I talk to creative people, and there seems to be a thread that runs through experiences, that runs through this phenomena about creativity, intuition, and the ability to kind of tap into that and listen to that. Yeah. Does that resonate with you?
Well, I think that the danger of AI is that we're going to become part of the robot without knowing it. And it'll turn out that AI doesn't achieve consciousness, we lose it. And we won't know that because we'll be so richly intelligent that we will not realize we've turned into machines.
And probably by the time we get there, there'll be a few of us looked at weirdly who swore off ever taking the machines on, and we live in the woods and are in touch with nature,
Right. Well, nature, talk about teachers, is a great teacher. All you have to do is go out in the woods and nature will teach you. And we see the opening of a flower or the dropping of a leaf. Nature is teaching you. Nature is also teaching you when it turns out that that bear doesn't like you very much, or likes you more than you would like.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier about something you experienced that, the stigma is changing now, but you experienced a specific kind of stigma that spread far and wide, and that's the joke about the anal probe.
Right.
And it hasn't gone away. I saw it on Bill Maher's a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he
spoke about it.
He talked about the trailer trash who have this experience and joked about the rectal probe. In other words, his mind is twinkling at the edge of life, but it's still more or less dead because it's a materialist mind. And the material, once you lose track of the presence of your soul and can no longer sense your soul, you're on and you're totally devoted to the material world, you're essentially dying. You're dying. And he's showing signs of life, because this is a strange sort of death. You can always come back to life until after you actually physically die. Then you will be kind of frozen in a certain state. You have to, then they think, oh my God, I made a horrible mistake and I'm trapped on this level. I can't ascend. And look at the cleaning lady. She's just on her way and I'm sitting here. And then sooner or later, a little monk comes along. There's a moment that you share with her and her husband that's going to be the most incredibly beautiful thing you've ever known. And then you hear the whoop, whoop. You know where you are, in a womb. And few people with proper grace can remember those moments and the moments when they entered the womb. And some entered, if you enter it intentionally, a lot of people who enter it intentionally will remember that. But mostly it's forgotten. You're born into a state of amnesia, yelling and screaming and going on. And then only gradually, when the brain develops enough maturity to retain memories, when you're 5 or 6, you get the first flashes of memory and everything starts over again. You get another chance.
And I guess some people holding us back in this world, President of the USA, things like that, it's still kicking and screaming, even though they're meant to be leading us to a better place.
Well, when you care too much about anything, you embrace the dark. If you care too much, you become addicted to money. A lot of people in our world are addicted to money. And what does it matter to some of these people when they've got billions and billions of dollars? It no longer matters, but they're still scrabbling around trying to get money. And it's pointless. It's a meaningless game. and they're wasting their time. Every second we're here is incredibly precious. Waste not one away. Waste not one.
Do you think, well, let me put it this way. When I think of the others, whoever they may be, they're coming to us because in some way they are curious about us. They think we might be special. Do you have any inclination as to what might be unique about us?
Well, excuse me, I have some theories, I would say, from observation of the grays that are, I can float, but I'm not going to say this is fact. I'm not, I'm explorer here, I'm a questioner.
Sure.
And I think they have a unitary mind or something close to it, and a lot of different personalities, but they're both all basically linked into the same mind. That means what we're looking at is one being with many bodies. How many, I don't know, but a lot. And here it's different. There's billions of beings and billions of bodies. And so their perception of us must be that each one of us is as whole as their entire, as they are, meaning that we are not going to be as well informed, but we are going to be highly individualized by comparison to them. And I think that's a fundamental difference. And I think they're having a lot of trouble with it because it's difficult to make sense of it. Their mind doesn't process as fast as ours do because it's so big. And things are changing here more rapidly than they can keep up with. And I think that makes them very nervous.
Sure. Yeah, it must be as hard for them to understand as it is for us to understand them, right?
Yeah.
Just we don't have the biology. Something I've noticed, recently the US government has started bringing out files and showing videos of grainy dots in the sky and things like that. And, great, cool, they're rolling this out. But there's something missing from this conversation. And it's people like you, it's experiences.
Oh, yeah.
They're absent. What do you think is going to go, or how do you think the process could be done better by including?
Well, the Soul Foundation, which is the main outlet for the academic and scientific communities, needs to find a way to include this part of the conversation without causing difficulty for the larger conversation that they're in, which is the academic and scientific conversation, without compromising it in the minds of people who are just exploring this in those communities. And that's a balancing act. I know Gary Nolan and Peter Skafish of the Soul Foundation, and I've discussed this with them, and with Gary anyway, and I think it's very important that Soul not do this injudiciously, because their point is to spread the possibility that this may be real into the academic and scientific cultures. And if it's a bridge too far and they're suddenly having people saying, oh, I flew a UFO, that's not going to work. And, they can't have Whitley Strieber up there talking about his stuff because that's not going to work either. So I go to the conferences and I talk to people. I spend the whole conference chatting with people and having basically a nice time, but getting these scientists into the experience of into what the experience is like without having it pushed on them on an official basis. So that's how I do that. The other one that's academically oriented more than scientifically is Authors of the Impossible at Rice University, which is centered around the letters that my wife saved and that are now at the university as an archive, for which I am very grateful. I think they have got to face at AOTI that they have to include the experiencers. And that means me, unfortunately, because they can't say, well, we're going to include an experiencer who's not as controversial as Whitley, because there's no one in the world right now who knows as much about this as I do, inside or outside. And I know a lot about what's going on the inside. And it's basically a fractured, self-destroyed catastrophe. They're not going to be able to fix that. We will never get out of that community of rival secret groups anything that has an umbrella level of coherence. We'll get bits and pieces. And so far, in this so-called disclosure thing, they haven't even really done that. They have given us a few blurry videos and a few heavily redacted documents, and then they proceed, after getting 1 billion hits on this and obviously an incredibly high level of interest, to mock it by what they did to the website and changed it and started putting up these stupid AIs. And you think to yourself, they got so much good office from this, and then they just destroy it and make insult all these people and make them angry. And you have to think, what is going on in their heads? And there's somebody in there, the screw is loose, or they wouldn't have done that. And so I don't think they're going to get anywhere. My uncle was involved in this, and my dad was too, I think. And General Arthur Exon, who was heavily involved in it, also told me most of our meetings were pencils up. We didn't even write anything down. And as late as 1988, he was still going back to Wright Patterson, to advise the group that was working on this, because they didn't have any records from his era, or very few. So this is a mess. And compartmentalization means that the left hand and the right hand, not only the left hand and the right hand not know what they're doing, each other are doing. The little finger, middle finger, the thumb, they don't know what each other are doing either. So how are you going to succeed in creating a new tool if you can't even use your hands? And the truth is, disclosure probably won't work for this reason, because there is always going to be somebody to stop the release of the smoking gun, I think. And I hope I'm wrong.
I think it's going to be people like you,
Ultimately,
with personal experiences, that lead the way in this.
Well, I think the experiencer community it's up to them to figure out how to break through the credibility barrier. And I think it's also important that the indigenous communities of the world become involved, because they have a much more nuanced vision of what this is that's very, very different from the basic Western vision, which, no matter how elegantly you put it, there's a shorthand under all of it. It's aliens from another planet. And that's probably not all of it. It might be some of it. But the indigenous people start from another place. And that other place is where this has real energy and potency, and where we can communicate with them on a meaningful level.
Sure thing. And it's interesting you say that, because the disclosure process that's meant to include everyone is currently excluding data that would inform us by excluding people,
Right.
and just steamrolling in them. And when we're talking about indigenous peoples, that's kind of been their whole past, right? It's just people coming in and steamrolling them.
Right.
And it's really important that we speak to all of these pieces of it so we can get a complete picture.
Yeah, it's steamrolling them because they don't know. The people doing the steamrolling just don't even know they're there. I mean, I assure you that most of the people on the inside, Eric Davis would agree with me, I'm sure, know nothing about the cultural traditions. Not all of them. There's bound to be some who do, that surround this, and they know nothing at all, or what they know about the experiencers are, oh, that's too woo. We don't want to go there. It'll make us look ridiculous. Well, that's where we start. That's where we start, in the confusion of the moment. And it's up to us to shine a light on it in such a way that it doesn't look crazy, but it looks like a but it looks like what it really is, whatever that turns out to be.
I love that you've faced this with such positivity. It's very inspiring.
Oh, thanks.
And as my last question, I want to know that what you think it means to be a human being.
Oh, well, thank you for such a simple question. And let's see if we can answer that in 30 seconds. What does it mean to be a human being? Well, I will tell you, I had a friend, Pamela Travers, who was a wonderful writer. She wrote Mary Poppins and other things, and she was a very, very, very deep into mythology. And she wrote a wonderful book called About the Sleeping Beauty and the power of fairy stories, the so-called fairy stories, which are not children's tales at all. They are tales about the interior of the human being. And she put it very well when she used to say, to lie in the lap of the goddess means to be unsure.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Whitley. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Spotify or on your chosen platform. If you could like, share, or subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. It helps us find our tribe. If you'd like to support the show and get access to a 1-hour live chat each month and early ad-free access, you can find us at Patreon. Just follow the link in the show notes or at our website, tobehumanshow.com. And feel free to reach out via the contact page or email at hello@tobehumanshow.com. As always, remember to be curious. The universe is bigger than we know.
What It Means to Be Human is a double-barrel production. This week's episode was produced by Roz Mugford and Dan Zetterstrom. Sound post-production by Parker Mosley with technical support from Dale Mugford. Our theme music is by Thunderbird.